Hi, I'm going to show you how to answer some real-world interview questions from top companies like Facebook, Microsoft, and Google using Scratchpad, which is a great site to practice interview questions because it curates these questions from top companies. So let me take you through the problem and then how we can answer it, and then the code. So this is Scratchpad. We have our question that needs answering. We have an expected outcome that you can look at. The approach tips, the Scratchpad for us to write our code, the check solution, and run code. So let's start with our question. Most active users on Messenger. And this is from Facebook with a medium level of difficulty. Facebook Messenger stores the number of messages between users in the table named FB_messages. In this table, user 1 is the sender and user 2 is the receiver, and the message count is the number of messages exchanged between them. Find the top 10 most active users on Facebook Messenger by counting their total number of messages sent and received. Okay, so we know that we need to find the top 10 most active users based on message count. And if we look at the expected outcome, we have a single user and the total amount of messages. Let's avoid looking at the hints because we know Python is very flexible, so let's write our own approach first. If we preview our table by clicking preview here, we can see that we have the date column, user 1, user 2, and the message count. I don't think it matters if we have combinations of messengers because it says that this is a send and receive, and we just want to count the total number of messages sent and received. So this would be the correct number for sent or received. However, we need to have these all in a single column because it could be multiple senders and multiple receivers. For example, Misty19 is the sender in this column, but Misty19 might be the receiver, and we need to count both her sent and received messages. So my first approach is to get these two columns on a single level. And another way to do that is to unpivot if we see this as a pivot table. So I'm going to unpivot the user columns. All right, so we will unpivot those. And so we have to create a single user column. Then because we may have multiple Misties or multiple K-Pinas, we want to group by user and sum. I think that's it. So essentially we're unpivoting and pivoting again. So let's get started. I'm going to document my code here and create a new df. So I'm going to say Facebook messages because as df, just resave the whole data frame because it's easier to write df. So the first thing I want to do is unpivot. And the way to unpivot is using the melt function. So the melt function is a part of pandas. We've already loaded pandas here, so pd.melt. And this is not a traditional IDE, so we kind of need to remember what we're going to be doing, and sometime in interviews you will have to do this on a whiteboard. So the values that I want to melt or put on the same level, we call those value vars, and those are going to be put in a list, and that's user 1, user 2. And then we want to be able to have our ID var, which is going to be a column, as I think we only need 1, because based on the output, we just need message count. So message count. All right, so that's the melt. And then if we run this, we can see the result. I'm going to save this as melt. And let's see, melt. So ID vars, so we already see we have a mistake. And we are also forgetting our data frame. Now we should be good. Okay. Okay, so we see we have our, now we see we have our information, and we need to group a message count by the value here. So I'm going to do melt.group by, and then I'm going to group by the value, which is the username. And then I want to sum the message count, sum, and just to give you an idea of what this looks like, if we don't reset the index, we don't get the value column. So I want to reset that index. And then we also want to finish the rest of the question, which says top 10 most active. So we want to also sort reset index. And let me just show you what that looks like. So now we have this data frame and we want to sort it. Sort values by, we want to sort by message count. And we also want this to be from ascending equals false because the default is true. And the last thing we want to do is have the top 10. So we only need the head, and then we pass it the argument 10, and let's see what we get. All right, that looks correct. Let's check our solution. Boom, and we got the right answer. So just remember, when you are in your interview and you're answering questions like that, that you walk your interviewer through your thought process, because sometimes it takes a long time to get to the answer, but as long as you are able to articulate what your thought process is towards getting there is very important. And we can look at some of the solutions from the user. So there are very different approaches. This user used a merge. Let's see if anybody used a melt. Yeah, so we see other users using melt. So there are many different approaches. However, Scratchpad's a great place to practice your Python and SQL queries. I hope that helps.